Can I come in, Brianna? Jessica asked as she stood in the doorway of Arson's room. It's a free country, the raven-haired young woman said as she sat on her bed reading a magazine. Jessica furrowed her brow at the rudeness that was just displayed to her, but entered and took a seat in the chair at Arson's desk. I just wanted to get to know a little bit about your past and where you got your powers and stuff, she said with a pleasant smile. You quit being a hero and become a biographer or something? Arson asked without looking up from her magazine. Jessica began to get angry. Look, I'm just trying to fit in here with you guys, she said. Arson looked up at her finally. Well, going insane and killing city officials is probably not the best place to start then, she said and went back to reading her magazine. Jessica felt her anger well up and saw her hands begin to glow with red energy. Calm down, she thought to herself. Arson looked up when she noticed the red glow in the room. Oh, does the baby wanna fight? She asked in a mocking tone. Jessica got up and walked to the door. You know, someday you're gonna need my help, and I may not help you because of your attitude, she said. Well, I guess if I ever need help pooing my pants I'll have to look elsewhere for advice. Arson said. Jessica growled angrily and stormed out of the room despite the overwhelming urge to beat the pretty young firebug's face in. All right, let's sit him here, get something to tie him up with. Knight said as he and Ataris entered the base with their captive still slung over Knight's shoulder. The soldier was put in a chair and tied up with some rope that Ataris found. When he wakes up we pump him for intel and turn him over to Longbow. They can do what they want with him after we're done. Knight said as he took a seat across from the soldier and waited for him to wake up. Ataris splashed a glass of ice water on the man's face to help in the waking process. Where am I? The man asked as he came around. Not important, Knight said. What is important is what Malta has to do with Ernesto Hess, he said. Who? The man asked. Ernesto Hess, the man that until a week ago was in charge of new hero orientation. We found files on his computer that link him to Malta. Now what do they have going on? Knight asked. Look, I'm just a low-level grunt. I have no idea what's going on. I just go where I'm told. The man said. How'd you know we'd be on the roof? Ataris asked. The man started to answer when a dagger flew through the air and impaled the man in the chest. Knight and Ataris turned around to see several women in black leather bodysuits armed to the teeth standing near the entrance to the base. Secondary objective complete. The dagger woman said to the others. Proceed with the primary objective, she said. The other women hit the small buttons on their belts and disappeared under a cloaking device. And here I thought we'd get to have a nice chat, Knight said. Breach, he yelled to anyone within the base before he rushed toward the lead assassin. Jessica rushed to the main entrance area of the base, Arson and Flower Child behind her. They saw Knight and Ataris engaged in combat with unseen attackers. Does anyone else not see what we're supposed to be fighting? Jessica asked before being struck in the face by one of the assassins. The blow knocked her back into Arson and Flower Child. But she recovered quickly and looked around for any sign of where the attack had come from. Knight had managed to grab one of the assassins and punched her belt. This caused her cloaking device to malfunction and make her visible again. He picked the woman up and heaved her into a wall across the room. He paused for a second to make sure she didn't get back up before he turned his attention to any other attackers. As he turned around he was struck in the chest by a throwing star bomb. The blast sent him flying backward, his armored chest heavily dented. Knight! Ataris shouted as he phases shifted his body to its intangible form and went to his leader's side. Flower Child had created a wall of roots between Arson, Jessica, and herself to buy time so they could formulate a plan. We need to find a way to see them. Arson said as she saw the roots in front of them being hacked away at by a sword on the other side. Jessica thought for a second. Hollow Man, she said. Yes, it sucked. How does this help us? Arson asked impatiently. In the movie, they could see the invisible man by the water from the sprinkler system covering his body, Jessica explained. Arson looked up at the sprinkler overhead and ignited her finger with a large flame. Water burst from the sprayer on the ceiling as the fire alarm began to sound. A second later, Arson blasted the roots away with a fireball and leaped through to the other side. The other two women following her lead. The water cascaded off of the assassins and served to betray their location somewhat. Jessica found her first target and gave her a devastating right hook that spun the woman around like a top before sending her crashing to the floor. Arson had blasted two of the attackers with flame jets and left them smoldering on the floor. As she turned to another, she was ensnared in a wire net of some sort that one of the women had thrown at her. The assassin hit a button on her belt and a powerful electrical current coursed through Arson from the net. Arson howled in pain and collapsed to the ground after the attack stopped a moment later. She lay helpless as the woman moved in with her sword to finish the job. "Get away from her, you bitch!" Jessica yelled as she leaped from the breakfast table and plowed into the woman with her stone feet, smashing her into the ground. Jessica picked up the crushed woman's sword and cut the net open to free Arson. "You saved me," Arson said weakly as she looked up at Jessica. "Don't take it personally, I just didn't want anyone taking my chance to kill you," Jessica said with a smile as she helped Arson to her feet. Flower Child had the remaining two assassins wrapped in a tangle of thorny vines on the other side of the room, and was with Ataris trying to help the heavily armored team leader to his feet. "Get any survivors to the holding cells. No clothing. I don't want to take any chances with these women," Knight said as he took a seat to avoid falling over. Jessica helped Arson to the couch and went with Ataris and Flower Child to lock up the surviving attackers. "And someone turn off the water before I rust," Knight yelled after them. The base was running a clean sweep to get rid of the mess from the battle, while Ataris was turning up the security programs on the base. Jessica lay on her bed with her pillow over her face, her body unwinding from the excitement of the afternoon. Jessica, can I come in?" Arson asked from the doorway. Jessica removed the pillow from her face. "Come to mock me again?" she asked. "Actually, I came to apologize and thank you," Arson said. "I never had a family when I was growing up. I was abandoned by my parents when I was born, and by the time I hit 15, I was living in halfway houses. It's not an excuse for me to be rude. But I just think the whole thing made me kind of a shut-in, and a bitch honestly," she said. Jessica nodded in agreement with her. "When I was about 16, I hooked up with some anarchist kids. And we set fires and looted places, tagged buildings, all kinds of bad stuff. Well, we wanted to do something big to gain street cred. So we went to a factory owned by the Cray Corporation and planned to bomb it," she said. "As we were setting the last charges, longbow agents showed up and started to bring us down. I was up on a catwalk and caught a laser blast to the chest that knocked me into a vat of chemicals. The bombs went off while I was still covered in the stuff, and somehow the fire that engulfed me and the factory gave me power. After that I went straight and joined the FPR," she said. "Doesn't surprise me that you were a street punk," Jessica said with a smile. "Anyway, I'm sorry for earlier, and I appreciate you saving me even though I was a bitch to you," Arson said. "If we're gonna be teammates, we should try and be friends too," Jessica said. "I'm starting to understand that," Arson said. "But I'm not changing your diapers," she added with a smile. "For right now, I'd settle for civility," Jessica said. "That I can do," Arson said as she put her hand out to shake Jessica's. The pair shook hands and smiled at each other. "Now that we've got that taken care of, how about a friendly ass-kicking in the training room?" Jessica asked. "I dunno, isn't it almost your bedtime, baby girl?" Arson teased. Jessica cracked her knuckles and glared at Arson. "It is looking like lights out time now that you mention it," she said. "Uh-oh, looks like someone's cranky." Arson said and ran out of the room. I'll show you, Cranky, Jessica called out as she ran after her.